In this video, we are going to graph quadratic functions. So in the last couple of days, we've been talking about labeling their points. So the vertex, the y-intercept, axis of symmetry, x-intercepts, etc. So today we're going to do the same thing where we're labeling our points, but we have to graph it before we can label. So for the first few that I'm going to show you, we are going to graph by hand. And then on the next page, I'll have you graph in Desmos, and then you can find your key attributes from the calculator. So the reason why we have to start by graphing these quadratic functions by hand is because as you move through your high school math courses, you will have to do lots of math by hand. So in Algebra 2, in Pre-Cal, in algebraic reasoning, lots of classes that are ahead of you, you will have to know how to do these things by hand, which is why we have to introduce it in Algebra 1. So what it says here is it says label A, B, and C first. So you know how to do this because we just did it when we factored. A is always the number in the front, that's with your x squared term. B is the number in the middle, that's with your x term. C is the number in the back, which is your constant, which is just a number. So in number 1, this is 1x squared. So my A is 1, my B is 4, and my C is 3. Then it says that we calculate the axis of symmetry. So the axis of symmetry is the line that cuts through the middle. It's kind of ugly, sorry. It's the line that cuts through the middle of a quadratic function, of a parabola. So in order to figure out where that line is, there's this formula called negative b over 2a. So what I need to do is I need to take my b value. So the formula is negative b over 2 times a. So what I know is that my b number, we just said, is the number 4 over 2. And then it says right here that my a number is a 1. So from the beginning, we labeled A, B, and C. So now I start by finding the axis of symmetry. To figure out where the axis of symmetry is by hand, without looking at the graph, I use the formula negative b over 2a. So negative 4 over 2 times 1 is 2. So negative 4 divided by 2 is the number negative 2. So my axis of symmetry is going to be the number negative 2. Step 3 says, so step 1's done, calculate the axis of symmetry. And then it says draw in your graph, so let's do that. So on my graph, I know that my axis of symmetry is always x equals. So I'm going to draw it like this. We actually don't want a real point there. I'm just going to draw a line. So there's negative 2. On my x-axis is right here. So I draw a line through that point. Okay. So now it says calculate the vertex. So what we know about a vertex is it takes the same x value of your axis of symmetry, but then there's a y value behind it. So it says plug your axis of symmetry into the original equation to solve for y. So what that means is I'm going to take my original equation, which was 1. Instead of x, I'm plugging in the negative 2 from my axis of symmetry squared plus 4. And then there's another x. So what I'm doing is I'm taking this equation right here. Let's do that in yellow. And I need to find the y value. So 1 is there. Instead of x, we plug in negative 2 squared plus 4 times negative 2, because there was another x, and then plus 3. So I just took this equation right here, and instead of x, I know that x equals negative 2. And so that's why I plugged in a negative 2 everywhere I saw the letter x. So now we solve this. So if you're not very good at solving, you're welcome to use a calculator. Negative 2 to the second power is 4 times a 1 is just 4. 4 times negative 2 is the number negative 8. And then there's a plus 3 in the back. Again, you can use a calculator if you need to. 4 minus 8 is negative 4, plus 3 is negative 1. So I now know that my vertex is at the number negative 2, comma, negative 1. Okay, so now I'm going to graph that on my graph. So my vertex, I'm going to go left 2 and down 1. So from here, left 2, down 1, put a dot. Okay, so there's my vertex and my axis of symmetry. Okay, now it says graph the y-intercept. So y-intercept is always really easy. The y-intercept is always your c. Your c is the number that's in the back of your equation. Super easy. So if it says that the y-intercept is always the c, if you look right here, the c is the number positive 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, super easy. So now what I know about a graph is the axis of symmetry is right in the middle. So if this one is 2 to the right, I'm going to have another point that's 2 to the left. And now I can connect all 3 of these dots, the vertex, the y-intercept, and then we call it the symmetric point. If there's this y-intercept on this side, it means there's a point on the other side of the axis of symmetry at that exact same spot. So this is how we graph a quadratic function by hand. So we answered all of these questions. In the very first question, we solved for x by doing negative b over 2a, and we got the number negative 2. Then we took that number, negative 2, that was the x value of our vertex, we plugged it in, and we got the number negative 1. Then I know that the y-intercept is the number in the back. It's the c, which is just the number 3. Or you could write that as 0, comma 3. Not too bad. So let's try that 2 more times, and then we'll go from there. Okay, let's move to number 2. So number 2, it says step 1, label A equals, B equals, C equals. A is the number with the x squared. It's a negative 2. B is the number with the x. It's a 4. C is the number in the back. It's a negative 5. So step 1, I labeled my A, my B, and my C. We're good at that. The next step I need is an axis of symmetry. The formula for the axis of symmetry is to do negative b over 2a. So negative, my b value is a 4 over 2. My a value is a negative 2. So now we can solve this. Negative 4 over 2 times negative 2 is the number negative 4. Negative 4 divided by negative 4 is the number positive 1. So this gave me my x equals 1 is called my axis of symmetry. So my axis of symmetry, I'm going to draw a line through the x-axis. Here's 1. It's kind of ugly. And here is my axis of symmetry. Done. Next up, it says take that axis of symmetry number and plug it in for x in your original equation. So my original equation said negative 2. Instead of x, I know that x is 1 to the second power plus 4 times 1 minus 5. Okay, these are all numbers, so my answer will be a number here. So I took my new x and I plugged it in to the original equation for the letter x. If you struggle with solving, you can just plug this in a calculator. You could open Desmos and just type in negative 2, parentheses 1, close parentheses squared, plus 4, parentheses 1, minus 5. But for this one, we're going to solve by hand. 1 to the second power is just 1 times 1, which is just 1. 1 times negative 2 is a negative 2. 4 times 1 is 4, and then minus 5. Negative 2 plus 4 is 2. 2 minus 5 is negative 3. So my vertex is going to be the original number that I got right here. That's the x of my vertex. And then the y is the number I got right here, which is the number negative 3. So now I'm going to graph that from the origin. We go to the right one and down 1, 2, 3. So that is the vertex. That's the bottom of my V. So the last step it says is graph the y-intercept. What I know about a y-intercept is that it's the c value of my original equation. C is the number in the back. So if it's my c value, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Negative 5 on the y-axis. What I know about this red axis of symmetry is that if there's a point to the left of the red dot, there also has to be a point to the right in the exact same spot, one box away. I connect my dots, and that's my graph. So now we can answer all of these questions. So we solved for the axis of symmetry by using the equation negative b over 2a, and we got the number positive 1. We solved for the vertex by taking the axis of symmetry, that was my x. I plugged it into the original equation, and I ended up with the number negative 3. So that's the vertex. The y-intercept is where my line crosses the y-axis. It's also the c of my equation, and we said that number is a negative 5, or we can write it as 0, comma, negative 5. Okay, let's try that one more time. Number 3. So number 3, again, move this over here. So number 3, I have an A, a B, and a C. A is the number with x squared. B is the number in the middle. C is the number in the back. The first thing I need to calculate is called the axis of symmetry. It's the x that goes through the middle of your U-shaped parabola. My axis of symmetry always uses the equation negative b over 2a. So that has a negative, so I'm going to write it's negative. Then the b value also has a negative, so I write that down, over 2. Instead of a, my a value is a 3. So now I solve this. On the top, there is a negative, and then a negative 6. A negative and a negative makes that a positive 6. The bottom 2 times 3 is also 6. 6 divided by 6 is the number 1. So my axis of symmetry cuts through the x-axis at the number positive 1. So on your graph, you find positive 1 on the x-axis, and you draw a dashed line through it. Step 1 is done, axis of symmetry. Step 2, we need to find the vertex. The vertex has an x and it has a y. So we take our original equation, there's a 3. Instead of the x, you plug in this x that we just solved for. Then the equation has a square. Then there's a minus, then there's a 6. Instead of x, x is 1. And then we have plus 5. So again, to solve this, you can plug this whole thing into Desmos, or you can just answer here. So to solve, we start with PEMDAS. So we have to do exponents before we can multiply. 1 squared is the same as 1 times 1, which is just the number 1. 3 times 1 is the number 3. Negative 6 times 1 is negative 6. And then there's a plus 5 in the back. 3 minus 6 is the number negative 3. Negative 3 plus 5 is the number 2. So I now know that my vertex is at the number positive 1, because it's that guy here, comma 2. The 2 came from that y value right there. Okay? So that is the vertex of my graph. So now I can graph that point. I'm going to go to the right one, and then I'm going to go up 2, right 1, up 2. That's my vertex. Step 1, find the axis of symmetry. Step 2, find the vertex. Step 3, find the y-intercept. The y-intercept is your c value. So that means I'm going to climb on my y-axis to the number positive 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So now to make a U shape, we have a symmetric point. If there's a green dot on the left of my axis of symmetry, it means I'll put another dot on the right, exactly where it is, but on the right side. So now I have 3 points, so I can connect them, and then this becomes my parabola. Okay, so when you are ready, oops, just kidding, I'm not done yet. Oopsie daisies. So now you can answer these. We know the axis of symmetry is x equals. It's the line that goes down the middle of your graph, so it's a positive 1. The vertex is the ordered pair that has the axis of symmetry, so that's 1, comma. And then we solved for our other number, which is right here. We plugged it in, we solved, and we got positive 2. So that's my vertex, 1, comma 2. My y-intercept is your c, or the number in the back, which was a 5. Or we can write it as an ordered pair, which is how you would usually see it on a test, 0, comma 5. Okay, so when you're ready, go ahead and try numbers 1 through 4. You can do these on the Go Formative if you're at home. And then we'll move into Desmos. I'm going to write your steps here so you have it. Step 1, this is one of the harder lessons. It's very mathy. Step 1, calculate the axis of symmetry, which is x equals your negative b value over 2 times your a value. Step 2, take that x number and plug it into your equation. And that's going to give you an x and a y. The x is here. Then you plug it in, and you get your y, and that's called the vertex. Step 3, your y-intercept, where it crosses the y-axis, is the c of your equation. And then once you have a vertex, you have a y-intercept. Your other point is called the symmetric point. It's on the opposite side of your axis of symmetry. Okay? So go ahead and try those. All right, so when you're ready, let's move on to the last piece of today. So what we have now is you tried to do some by hand, and now we're going to practice with the calculator. Super, super easy. All right, so what we have in this first one here is I need to take this equation. It says f of x equals, instead of solving for the axis of symmetry, we're going to use Desmos to see where the axis of symmetry is. So I'm going to go straight to Desmos and type it in. F parentheses x equals negative 1/2 x squared minus 4x minus 6. Negative 1 divided by 2, right click x squared minus 4x minus 6. Okay, and here's my parabola. So what it's asking for first is the axis of symmetry. Let's first sketch it. So this parabola, the cool thing about Desmos is you can just click. So the number at the top is -4, 2. So I'm going to graph that. It goes to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, up 2. This point is at -2, 0. So I'm going to graph that. -2, 0. This point is at -6, 0. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to be like right here. -6, 0. There's another perfect point. And that's at the point on the y-axis, 0, -6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I can connect my dots. So I used Desmos. I clicked the most important spots, and I graphed this. So what I know about the word axis of symmetry is it's always x equals. My axis of symmetry is the line that goes through the middle of the graph. That number is -1, 2, 3, 4. It's the number -4. My vertex is this ordered pair at the top. To get there, you go left 1, 2, 3, 4, and up 1, 2. Left 4, up 2. My y-intercept is where my line crosses my y-axis, which we said was right here, and it was at 0, -6. Solutions, another word for solutions, are the x-intercepts. One was here, so that's -2. And there's another solution here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which was at -6. And you can see that from Desmos. So solutions, you can click them. It's where you cross the x-axis, -2 and -6. You could write them as ordered pairs, where it's -2, 0, -6, 0, or you could just write the actual x's, which were just -2 and -6. Okay, not too bad. So I'm going to do one more with you, and then you'll try the rest on your own. So number 2, same thing. If you ever see f of x equals, g of x equals, y equals, you can just type it into Desmos. So g parentheses x equals. -x² minus 4x minus 3. Okay, so looking at this graph, if you notice, there are 4 little gray dots. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are the 4 most important key attributes. So I'm going to take each of those, and I'm going to graph them on my actual paper. The first one is the ordered pair, left 2, up 1. So on my paper, I'm going to go left 2, up 1. My next one, -3, 0. So from the origin, it went 1, 2, 3. My next one is at the ordered pair -1, 0. So I go left 1. And my last gray dot, which means it's important, is right here, 0, -3, which is right here. So now I take those dots and I connect them into a U shape. So now I can label my points. My axis of symmetry is x equals. It's the x that cuts through the middle of your graph. 0, 1, 2. So it's -2. My vertex is the ordered pair at the top. Oops. To get there, we went left 2 and up 1. We could also just click it from Desmos, Here's the vertex. You click it and it tells you it's -2, 1. So easy. My y-intercept is where my line touches my y-axis, which is right here. Let me change that color for a second. Hold on one sec. I want them to match. Vertex, we said left 2, and then up 1. My y-intercept is where my line crosses the y-axis. If it's a y, it sits on the y spot, and it went down 1, 2, 3, so that's -3. From Desmos, you can also just click the y-axis where it crosses, and it tells you that it's 0, -3. Last but not least, my zeros are the most important words in this chapter. This one is sitting at -1, and this one is sitting at 1, 2, 3, -3. You can also, again, click Desmos. One's x-intercept is -1, the other x-intercept is -3. Okay, go ahead and try number 3. Plug that into Desmos, and then find your key attributes. Okay, the last thing I'm going to show you is number 4, because it looks different, but it's still the same. So in number 4, this form is called vertex form. What vertex form means is that you have parentheses. And I'll explain why it's called vertex form in just a second. So if you ever see an f of x, you can go straight to the calculator. F parentheses x equals. So f parentheses x equals -4, open parentheses, x plus 1 squared. Remember, squared is little a to the 2 button, plus 3. There it is, and here's my most important pieces. Those are kind of ugly. So -1, 3. Come on. So it goes to the left 1, and up 3. This touched at like a tiny little decimal. I'm going to put it like right there. This touched like right before the 2. I'm going to put this one like right there. And then it touches the y-axis at the number -1. Which is kind of close. So this is going to make a U shape that looks like this. So my axis of symmetry is always x equals. It's the x number that cuts through the middle of your graph. 0 to the left 1 is -1. My vertex is the ordered pair at the top. To get there, we go left 1, and then you go up 2. My y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. So my blue dot right here is where it crosses the y-axis, which is 0, -1. These solutions are ugly. I'm going to write them exactly what it was from Desmos. So in Desmos, it said solutions are your x's. There's one at -1.866. And there's one at -0.134. Ugly. But that's all you have to do. Okay, so go ahead and try numbers 5 and 6. So plug those into Desmos, sketch your graph, and then try to answer those key attributes. And there's another page, numbers 1 through 4, that you can practice after that. So if you struggled in the first thing that we did today, where you were solving for the actual vertex and axis of symmetry using the formula -b/2a, if you struggled with that, that's okay. You can use Desmos to get your key attributes, but as we move forward into the future, you'll do those by hand, but you'll have lots of practice of that in the future.